everybody. Welcome back in. Welcome in. It is Sunday, and we are here for our Sunday conversation on the Super Sunday show here on LTL Media. Welcome in, everybody. Make sure to smash that like button when you come in, and we're gonna hopefully get this kicking off today and have some fun. Hope everybody's having a great weekend, and Monday we'll start the defense again, winding down, getting close to the end of trial and getting ready to rest. And lots of interesting things have happened over the last couple of days, especially on Friday with ARCA. And we're going to continue that on Monday. But let's do this today. I want to bring in a guest of mine. And it's funny, this kind of started out as I was kind of peeping on Ted's post. And I jokingly put a comment on one of his posts. He was posting about lawyer, Peter Tragos, and he's been doing these afternoon rundowns with Peter, these half-hour segments. And I said, Ted, when are you going to come over and do my show? And he said, I'll reach out to you. And me being very aggressive and wanting to get great guests on my show, I reached out to him, and here we are. So I'm not going to wait too much longer. Let's bring in Ted. And good afternoon, Ted. Well, yeah, we are in the afternoon. Good afternoon, Ted. How are you? And welcome to the Super Sunday show.
I'm great. Thank you for having me, Brian. It's good to see you, man.
It's very nice to see you. And I had to say, a couple of weeks ago, we ran into each other outside the courthouse. And I remember what you said to me. You said that I was doing a great job over here on LTL Media. And that kind of stuck out to me. And I said, I've got to get Ted over here. And again, thanks for coming and doing this.
Yeah, I'm always interested in everyone's sort of perspective because everyone sees this thing differently. You can have two people watching the same 5 minutes and they'll come with completely different perspectives. So I like to, surf and see what's out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get into the Karen Reed case, if you could do this for us, Ted, just tell us a little bit what inspired you to get into media and how did you start your career?
Yeah, I was pretty lucky in the fact that I knew at a very young age. I was 11 years old, and I had an opportunity. It's like a school newspaper. I lived in California at the time, and we had kind of came up with our own stories, and the principal would take us to different places. And I said, "Oh, I want to go to a TV station." So we went to the local TV station in Monterey, California, a small market. But right there, I was kind of hooked at everything that I saw in front of me, the immediacy of what was going on, how, the reporters and anchors worked the day that I saw them. I just thought, wow, this is something where you get to see so many different slices of life. And that's been such a cool part about my job is just, I get to be in all these situations and I have a front row seat to it. And so for me, it's just an amazing perspective. You learn a little bit about a lot of things. You never become an expert, but you learn a little about a lot of things that I throughout my career. I did when I started, you had, before you could get to Boston, you had to work a bunch of smaller markets. It's not exactly the same now, but I worked right out of college. I went to Burlington, Vermont. I worked for the worst ABC affiliate in the country at the time. It was horrible, but it was my first job. Went to Tennessee. Went to Tampa, Florida, did, a contract in Providence. And then in 2004, I got hired by Boston 25, and I've been there ever since. And I started out as a GA reporter, working nights, which is cool. We were on the street. Now I'm doing more long form stuff and more investigative work. But obviously, just through the people that I knew, knowing David Yannetti and knowing sort of the players in the Karen Reed case, I, learned very early on that, there were some things that just kind of didn't make a lot of sense. And that kind of piqued my interest. And that's kind of what got me to where I am now.
Yeah, that's great. Wow. What a history. And knowing, knowing David and knowing the players in this case. Let me ask you about this. So you've received praise, I'm sure, and a lot of criticism for your coverage. What has it been like being part of this story and, still trying to report on it?
Yeah, I think I'm glad that I'm doing it at my age now and the point of my career where I've been, with Boston 25 for 20 years. I guess I have confidence in what I do. And I know that, I guess when I look at a lot of the reporting that I do, I like to do stuff that's like common sense, right? Like if there is something that's going on that doesn't make sense, that where money's being spent and it's not supposed to be, it's wasted money, or there's someone who's scamming someone, something that's like, okay, that makes sense. And I find that with this, I like just kind of, if you see my X feed, a lot of times I will just put what is word for word verbatim what is said in court, because sometimes if you try to in any way just write a statement that may be someone can say, oh, you're siding for the defense or you're siding for the prosecution. And it's hilarious sometimes, like people will come after me and they'll say, oh, you wrote something that was beneficial to the defense or prosecution. I'm like, well, look at the last tweet when it was during the direct examination. Now we're on to the cross examination. So that's what's going to happen. But I'm also like, I've seen just stuff just like you in this case that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And things that I still am not able to wrap my head around.
Yeah, there is a lot of that. And I think, seeing the difference between trial 1 and trial 2, trial 1, focusing a lot more involved in the people that have been involved in this. And I think we got a taste of that in the beginning of trial 2. But now looking at this, I feel, in my opinion, the sole focus has been on the accident. I mean, that is the major thing in this case, the way that I'm seeing it now. And I think it was a really great way to attack this in a defense standpoint and give that reasonable doubt. Is this possible? Could this be possible? And we saw a clear example of that on Friday with the ARCA testimony from Dr. Wolf and in the experimentations. And then we just saw like the different dynamics between Wolf's testing and Welcher's testing is just completely night and day. It's just been very interesting, very interesting this time around. So what has it been like in the courtroom, sitting there, watching ARCA do these presentations, and and if you can give any comments on the jury, how have they been reacting to it?
Yeah, and people ask me about the jury all the time. It's such a big group this time. It's 18 people, so you're like trying to keep your eyes on the person who's on the witness stand, the person questioning them, and then what might be a reaction. There's one person who I called him the laugher. Another reporter said, no, I call him the smirker. The dude just like, every time there's something that's like a little shady, he like openly like starts smirking and in court, and obviously showing his opinion to whatever the testimony is. They all have notebooks, and some of them are 4-5 notebooks in already in this trial. Wow. So they're supposed to leave them on the chair, and like 4 or 5 notebooks. I mean, that's like going through like a semester of class. The amount of time they're spending and what they're learning, it's like a semester of class. And most seem to be pretty dialed in. I mean, it's a lot. Some days it gets hot in that courtroom when it's, a Friday afternoon and they're talking science and stuff that may not be super exciting. They're doing a really good job, from what I can tell, at least paying attention. I haven't seen anyone catch a nap yet, at least in front of me. But it's a big group, and it's a really diverse group. There's a young person who's probably doesn't look much older than 19, 20, and then there's people who are probably in their 50s and 60s, and it's also diverse group on race for Norfolk County. I think it's probably a good measurement of what the county is. So yeah, it's wild. I haven't been in every day because of the randomizer situation. There's a situation, who they let into the courtroom. It's supposed to be done through a machine every week, and I have not been one of the people who's been super lucky with getting in. But in this case, if you're persistent, a lot of the times I will end up getting in, because there's 10 spaces, right, in the courtroom. But there are a number of people who have been very fortunate in getting chosen to have a seat every week who just don't show up. So a lot of times I wait till like 10 a.m. is when you can go check with them and say, hey, is there a seat? And then you get in. But it's, obviously you have to pack up, kind of run in and get there so you don't miss anything. But yeah, it's been, I feel like having the benefit of the first trial has made covering this trial a lot easier. And sometimes I'm like, I want my stories to be different, my reporting to be different from at least what I'm doing on TV than the last trial. But the important answers and the important information is the important information. It's not going to change. So, what comes out may look very similar to my reporting the first time around, but that's because it's the stuff that you have to put out there that makes a difference to the case.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, like, how do you stay objective while being human, reporting this? I mean, it's tough. I mean, sometimes you're in there and you listen to very emotional testimony. I mean, I got to be honest. I mean, I'm emotionally invested in this. I've had time to spend time around the Reeds. I've spoken to Karen multiple times and spent time with them. I mean, it's hard not to get emotionally invested. How does that work for you when you're reporting on such a large case like this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I wouldn't say I'm emotionally invested in the outcome. Certainly not. I definitely have. The Reeds. I speak to the Reeds. Now and then. They've always been very open with me. They've always answered all my questions, and both of the both Karen and her parents have come in to speak with me, and they're nice people. I mean, that's the impression that I have from dealing with them. Yeah, I guess it's just like, you have a job to do, right? So it's when you're putting down what happened in court that is fact, you don't have to worry about, that say, oh, it's whether it's fact reporting. So it's I guess you don't get I don't often. I started doing the podcast with Peter that you talked about, but a lot
Yeah.
of times what I'm doing, especially on TV, is 2 minutes, and it's like, here are your
Yeah.
this is the witnesses who spoke, this is the salient points that they brought up, and here's what's happening tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a lot different when you get on a podcast and kind of can talk a little bit more and, expunge on a lot of
Yeah.
things that go on. Yeah. Let's shift gears here a little bit. And I want to talk about the phenomenal 2-hour special that you did and featured Karen. And I remember actually saying to you, and this is what kind of got us talking. We're outside court walking out one day, and I said, Ted, you did a great special on Karen. I thought it really humanized her, especially that part inside the SUV, that last half an hour, 45 minutes you did with it. I thought it was phenomenal. But can you just take us through like the process of how that all happened and how you work through all of that?
Yeah, I never actually thought it would be something that she would do, because previously she had spoken to 2020 and to Dateline, so I can see trying to get her message out to a national audience. Those are bigger players than us. But we were talking. We had the Super Bowl on our air this year, and we were talking about, okay, we need a story that we can promote during the Super Bowl, and I guess I wanted to be that story. I wanted to be the guy who was in the promo during the Super Bowl, whatever story I had. So I said, all right, I'm going to go try to, make some calls, figure out what I can put in there that will hopefully keep people for an hour or 2 hours after the game ends and the post game, when it's not a local team. So I eventually reached out to Reed's team, and within a couple of days, I got an answer that they were good to talk. And it's wild to think that. I mean, I think it shows you how much control and involvement she has in her defense. The fact that Jackson was there for the interview at our station, but he wasn't there. There were no lawyers with her the first day we met her. That was just
Wow.
our crew and her. And I mean, in what world does that happen?
Right.
Before a trial, that
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ted.
No, I was just saying that it's. I was very surprised because I think during some of the other interviews, her lawyers were with her. And I wanted to make sure going into this, it's like everything is on the table, just so and that was our agreement, that there was, everything was on the table, and I wanted to sort of ask some of the questions that people would come up and ask me and say, what about this? So those are some of the thoughts that, going into the interview, trying to think, okay, what are the questions that I've had for 2 years? And what are the questions that people often ask me about the case?
Yeah. Anything that so let me ask you a question. So when you first shot the segment inside the SUV, was that the first segment you shot? And then the segment with Alan was the second part?
Yeah, those were separate days. So
Okay.
we met her, when they were staying at one of the hotels they were staying in at the seaport. Alan was arriving that night, and our original plan was to ride with her to the airport to get her picking up Alan. But I think due to timing, his flight might have been late. We ended up saying, okay, we'll do some. Well, I wanted to take her. I wanted to go by Fidelity. That was one of the things we wanted to do, was go by where she used to work as an equity analyst,
Yeah.
and drive around the city. Because sometimes it's good when you take people out of this sit down sort of, staid environment where you're a reporter asking questions, subject answering it. It just, sometimes it's more fluid. And then that's what I think that worked in the car. We walked a little bit in the seaport. So yeah, we wanted to also, make it visual too. So there were different spots that we were doing the interview. And yeah, that first full day that we talked to her, Alan came in later that night, and I'm trying to think, I saw him briefly, but he wasn't listening in. And then the next day it was both of them for the full sit down interview.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Thanks for that insight. So was there anything that you had to cut put on the cutting room floor? Any behind the scenes details or surprises that you could tell us about that didn't make it in the special?
I mean, the whole, we ended up sharing the entire interview on YouTube. So honestly, and anything that's like, anything that's good is definitely going to be in the story. Like anything that was said, I thought, it was interesting at the time. She said that, once her and Alan were going to start talking, they were running down like a new lead so the private investigator, according to her, was working all the way up to the last, a few months before the trial, that they were still going out there, still running down leads. And I think that's what's his name? Majewski, I think his last name is. But she has a private investigator working for him, and he's kind of been in the shadows. But a lot of the revelations that have come out through this trial have been tracked down by him. Like he, and he writes like memorandums. He writes like a report of what he finds. So you don't hear his name, but in terms of helping to build her defense, I think this guy has been super important, because I think, they talked about during the trial the other day about Lucky Loughran and him giving statements to the defense. Well, that was done through their PI, and the PI has been out in Canton, at least he was out in Canton relentlessly during the first kind of couple of years of this trial.
Wow. I just learned a lot of stuff from you that I didn't even know about. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah,
that.
no, I mean, you don't hear a lot about him. And you wonder, like, that guy might have a book to write. When this is all done, if he gets the green light and all this stuff, he may have some interesting story, because he would have to be engaging with these people, right? He would be the one contacting them. I know that. I'm not sure how much he tried to speak with Steve Scanlon, but I would think that, at least at the beginning, Scanlon would have been a guy they would wanted to sort of track down and lock up what he had to say. Obviously, he gives a much different story now. I tried to get Steve Scanlon. We had an old address for him, and I sat outside that old address like 4 days, not knowing he wasn't living there anymore.
Yeah.
And then finally I got his new address, and I did knock on his door one time, and he just slammed it shut. Wanted
Wow.
nothing to do. Yeah, I was really hoping that, because the defense, it was after David went into court and spoke about, this is in pretrial hearings when David spoke about his communication with Scanlon and what Scanlon told him. But obviously, Scanlon is not a player in this case, and he.
Oh no. All right, just hang in there, everybody. We've had some issues with his Wi-Fi and getting on YouTube. We'll hang here for a second. Make sure everybody just smash the like button as you come in. We'll wait to see if Ted comes back. Appreciate everybody joining me this afternoon. And I know there's been some Wi-Fi issues going on. He had to go through his security checks to get on, and yeah, I know, right on the good stuff, right, everybody? So hang in there. We'll get Ted back. I'm gonna see if he can come back here. But anyway, hope everybody's enjoying the interview so far. It actually looked like his Wi-Fi was starting to clean up, and then we had the dropout. So hang in there a little bit. We'll wait and see if Ted can make it back on. Again, when we first started this, we were having issues getting him onto StreamYard through his computer. So he said, I'll just do it on my phone. But hopefully everybody's enjoying it so far. Doreen says, amazing job. Let me get to a couple super chats that came in. We'll hopefully get Ted back. Dina Miller, thank you so much for becoming a new channel member. I appreciate that. And we got Pebbles Flintstone with $2, says LTL Media. Thank you for this great guest. Yes, and it was just starting to get really good. That's okay. He'll make his way back on. How dare you? Member for 11 months. Just got to be listening, got supper going. All right. Thank you so much for all of that. Tonight, I just let everybody know, after this show at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'll be joining Mazza Media, where we'll be having a Free Karen Reed donation defense fund fundraiser over in his channel. Nan Gallagher will be joining us over there. Attorney Nan Gallagher. We have Britt Happens popping in. I think Dina Corby's going to be joining us. So we'll be over there at 6 p.m. Ted's trying to jump back on here. I see him here backstage. Here he is. Yeah, we got you back, Ted.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I don't know if that's Wi-Fi or what.
Yeah, I think the Wi-Fi on your end's been a little jumbled, but we'll make it through. We're doing good here. Yeah, so if you want to continue there, what you're talking about Steve Scanlon, you said you found an old address, you went to his new address, and he slammed the door on you.
Yeah, and we waited for a couple minutes, hoping that he came out and kind of looked to see if we were gone, and no, we were still there. And I just tell us what happened.
Yeah.
You were from my understanding, we would probably not. Well, I'm not sure if we'd be where we are today if it wasn't for Steve Scanlon coming forward and, according to David Giannetti, saying, "Hey, your client's innocent. This is what actually happened to your client." And that was at the infancy of this case. So he was someone who, ended up, I guess, telling the prosecution that, no, my words were taken out of context. This is not what I said, or I was being quoted incorrectly. I was just offering, my services as a PI that I could possibly help if they wanted to run down other leads. But his explanation now is diametrically opposed to what Yannetti said during open court about what he originally said about what happened to John O'Keefe.
Just come. Yeah. And I agree. I completely agree. If you just come forward and tell us what happened, we'd be in a completely different spot. I totally agree. So let me talk about courtroom activity. And we'll go to first trial and second trial. Any witnesses or testimony that's really stood out to you, good or bad? If you want to just talk about a little bit of that. I mean, this is such it's like one of the most wildest cases. I don't even think you could script a Hollywood movie about this. And I guarantee you, this is going to get probably turned into some type of Hollywood movie. It's just wild. Every single day that I invest time in this and research and look, I mean, it's like a mouth-dropping moment for me as these trials have gone on, especially in trial 2, where, like you said, we're hearing a lot more information. The defense has brought in a lot more information that the Commonwealth has, and now actually getting to see what I thought ARCA was going to do in the first trial, bring in reenactment, reconstructions of these accidents, and it's just been so profound. anything, like I said, anything that sticks out to you here, good or bad?
Yeah, I mean, I thought this week alone, officer, I think some of the most sort of best back and forth or most interesting, where the tone kind of went up, was Officer Kelly Dever.
Yeah.
Um, so the defense calls her, right, and she's like, first question she says is like, I don't know why I'm here. Like, there's
Yeah.
no reason for me to be here. Like, and from obviously the backstory on her is that, she told the feds that Higgins and Berkowitz, the former chief, were in the Sally Point with the
Yes.
Lexus for a wildly long time. But then it was brought to her attention. I'm assuming it was the feds who said to her, like, hey, that's not possible. You left work before the Lexus even got there. So, the defense calls her. I'm not sure if they know that at the time, but the defense calls her and was like, okay, we want, we're going to call you to testify. And she's like, no, like, I misremembered. I I think the word she used, distorted memory. That was
Distorted
exactly what
memory.
she said.
Yeah.
And they said, so Jackson, I think, said something to her about, well, your previous statement is this. If you come in court, say something else, that's perjury. And that all got brought out in court. That usually that stuff is more sort of hidden, but this got brought out in court, and and even just Jackson and her name, he called her Deaver,
Yeah.
and she snapped back at him for that. So it's just like, she's a Boston cop, right? I'm sure she has to deal with a lot of stuff. I'm sure you become pretty hardened as a police officer. But I thought her exchange with Jackson was, some of the more interesting stuff that I've seen. The science stuff, from Dr. Wolf, he just seems like he knows. He's a guy who comes across as very intelligent. He's when he's on the stand, he's very measured in what he says, and it makes sense that this is his job because he's very, very good at it. And when you watch some of that recreation, they did tests from like 10 to 29 miles an hour. And the idea of that was like, okay, well, so the Commonwealth says the events happened this way, that, John was sort of clipped and sideswiped. And then that kind of threw him to the lawn. And what their test showed was, well, we ran it multiple times at multiple different speeds, and nothing lined up. The damage to the tail. One of the things they kept talking about, I don't know if you noticed this, was they kept talking about, I guess, Karen Reed's taillight. Inside the taillight, there's something called a diffuser, right?
Yes.
And so the diffuser on Karen Reed's taillight was broken, but in majority of the tests that ARCA did, the diffuser didn't break.
Yeah.
And you also saw, I think, the 29-mile-an-hour test, which would be the highest speed that ARCA did, would be most, in terms of what the Commonwealth says happened, that makes the most sense, because, yeah, they're saying 24 miles an hour, but that's not the highest. That at that 24, when that 24 miles an hour was recorded on her phone, her accelerator, according to the prosecution, is still at 70%. So
Right.
you're going to see a speed higher. So they get to 29, and when you get to 29, the whole entire back windshield shattered. You remember that?
Wow.
Like, that's
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
I noticed. With the arm, like it was, the damage was much worse than what you saw on Karen's car.
Yeah, and the thing is, and Ted, what's very interesting about it too is doing, noticing and doing that experiment. You had that lift gate light that was that long cylinder, almost looking light, and then the
Yep.
actual tail light itself, and lining that arm up like the Commonwealth is saying, it was really the impact of the damage was really on that long piece, but only clipped really the inside piece of the tail light. So I loved when they brought up the actual taillight photo from the Sally Port and the experimental taillight. They were just completely different. And my mouth was just like what? I mean, I knew this all along, but even just seeing it after the recreations. And I do agree, with Dr. Wolf. I mean, he knows his stuff. If they recreate this this experiment 10 times, probably 9 out of the 10 or 8 out of the 10, you're going to get that similar result. It was just, it was really shocking to see, them actually recreating that and seeing where that damage would land on that tail light.
Yeah, and are you talking about like at the top of the Lexus, there's like almost like a fin thing, and that's so yeah. The Commonwealth is saying that is what caused. So remember John
the
had
hit,
like
the
that
hit
thing
under
on
his
the
eye, right?
So that's what they're saying. Like they're saying, okay, this lines up with the arm, and that lines up with the hit under the eye.
Yeah,
But I mean, no one's there. We don't have video of it. So both sides of this, you have to take both with sort of a grain of salt. But I understand, when you run multiple tests at multiple speeds, and also the clothing too. I thought that was interesting too, and smart to do. So you look, they show the jury, okay, here's the damage that John had on his sweatshirt, and here's the damage that a similar material sweatshirt had from all the crash tests. And when you got to the 29 mile an hour, it was like really ripped up. It like
yeah.
there were multiple holes, and they were much higher as well than sort of the puncture or other holes that he had that he actually had on his sweatshirt.
Well, I think we would have video of it. It just didn't record that night. Just that specific night across the street, the camera that was across the street just didn't record anything. And I still find that very interesting and funny. Let me pose this question to you, Ted, and let's go back to the taillight really quick. Do you find it very interesting that with the Commonwealth's theory saying that Karen hit John, obviously the taillight exploded, John did a pirouette on the lawn, and then that she left 34 Fairview, drives back to Meadows that night, drives back to 34 Fairview that night, goes all the way to Dighton, her car gets picked up in Dighton, then trailered all the way back to Canton. That being said, we know there was a blizzard, and we know here in New England that they salt and pre-treat the roads. Why is it that the photo inside the Sally Port of the back of Karen Reed's SUV, the black SUV, is completely covered in salt and sand, but the evidence photos of Karen's taillight taking out of the actual vehicle itself, and they're side by side, we have the tail lens that has no salt and debris on it, and then that inside part of the actual taillight, which is black. There's no watermarks, there's no sand, there's no salt, there's no debris. So why would that be if she drove around Massachusetts in such a given amount of time? It's a very weird thing to me, and something that I feel like the defense could have pushed a little bit more on. Go ahead, Ted. I'm sorry.
It's interesting you brought that up. That's something that hasn't clicked to me yet. One of the things though to add is, did you see the video they showed in court where the Lexus sits, in the Canton police garage, and you see the snow, like one of the arguments about the hair and the glass is you see all the snow melting and kind of falling off in the garage, and it was like
right,
pouring down at one part when the majority of it fell off. And that is also an area too where you think that, well, okay, if the taillight's that cracked, that you'd have debris in it.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, they're literally, I'm telling you, Ted, pull up the photos of it. It's literally pristine. And I'm like, wait a minute, if this exploded and it's exposed to the weather elements and all these elements, and it's snowing, we have salt on the road. I mean, obviously we know that living here in New England, it's like, why would that taillight be absolutely pristine clean? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Do you think for like the recreation, remember they took the pieces and put them back together? Do you think that had anything to do with it? Like with, I'm not sure.
Evidence. I don't think you should be cleaning evidence. I mean, it's not good if that did happen. And that's something I felt like they could have dug in a little bit more. I know Robert Alessi touched on it a little bit, and I forget what during the testimony. Maybe was it Gallagher? Might have not. I don't know. I have to go back because it's been so much testimony. But he touched on a little bit, but he didn't dig in enough. Speaking of Robert Alessi, I know he's been a huge addition to Karen Reed's team in the retrial. What's your thoughts and opinions on him?
Yeah, no, he's a really interesting guy. I always enjoy. He's very chatty. He always comes up and chats with the reporters, and I always thought he lived in the city of New York, but I guess he's upstate now because his firm's based out of the city. But he's definitely a unique character. I didn't know he's like a boxer. And he's had his nose broken 7 times, he told me, and he's like he pushed it he pushed it down. He's like, look, no cartilage. I guess his dad was a golden glover.
Wow.
He's super he, I've been impressed by Alessi, and there's a reason why I said, like, where do you typically, what courts do you typically, do you have a home? And he's like, no, I just travel the country. Like he's a heavy
Wild.
hitter, right? So whenever there's a big case like that, like this, he's one of the people that he calls, and he does most of his practicing in federal court, but he also had a role in 9/11 when he was in New York City. He, I think, was involved in the memorial or something to do with the legalities of what eventually is now there at the site at the World Trade
Wow.
Centers. So I think he's been a good addition to the defense. A couple times with Bob, I feel like I'm trying to remember who the witness was. I felt like he was almost getting too much into the weeds. But it's like, that's what happens. And when you have these smart people, they understand some of this stuff at the level that myself or maybe the jurors may not understand. But, they want to make sure to their best ability that they're getting their point across.
Yeah, I was talking to Nathan Reed and asking him about Robert, and he said the man is wild. He says he doesn't sleep. He literally stays up all night, constantly works on the case, and then he'll go to bed for like a few hours, and then he's up at like 4 a.m. and he's at the gym. He'll come back and sleep for like maybe an hour or two, gets up and gets ready for court, and they're in court. He's like a vampire. He just doesn't sleep.
Yeah, and I think he does an hour and a half workout every other day, I think he told me. Every week, and he is, I don't know which one, but he's like, yeah, I got a membership at Equinox for the time when the trial's going on, because I need like a good place to work out. And one of the things I think he trains is the boxing. So yeah, I wish I had that type of discipline that he has, because that takes some serious discipline, right? To be able to work out for an hour and a half at a time and do it at the level he's doing it at.
It's great. It's phenomenal. And at his age too, like it's just great.
Yeah.
It's really, really good. It's great stuff to see that.
Dude, Jackson's in his 60s.
Yeah.
He looks pretty good for and I think David's in his 60s too. And
yeah.
they all,
Yeah, they're always, when I'm around them, we're always talking about being very conscious about their diets. It's pretty funny. But let's just transition to this. So, how's covering this trial changed how you see your role as a journalist, especially in an era when public trust in media is so divided?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we need to do a better job of meeting viewers where they're at. That, we can definitely improve. The industry can improve on that, because people are consuming news so much differently than they did. You can't tell somebody like, oh no, if you want the news, you got to watch it at 6:00. That doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
People want to watch news when they want to watch it, and they want to get it from the people that they like and that they trust. So I think I've actually been really pleased with like that. The podcast that we're doing was not, I've always thought, hey, that would be a great idea, but I have a new boss who came in, and he was the one who was like, let's do this. Like, and he gave me the freedom, and I was psyched. And like, that was his, we didn't know how it would go, but that was his idea. He was the one who said, yeah, let's start doing that. And he's giving me the time so I'm taking Thursdays away from the trial to work on that and to catch up on some of my other reporting. So it's a nice little break. I have like a screen, or I'll have it on my phone and I'll watch. But yeah, no, I think some of the other reporters too, like Christina Rex, she's all over. She does a lot with on YouTube and other stuff outside the traditional broadcast space, and So we're trying to, I mean, the goal is to take whatever we do here or anywhere else and hopefully bring viewers to, to the television station or to our website. But, completely cognizant that, appointment television is becoming a thing of the past, and that the world has changed. And I think people appreciate when they hear things conversationally in ways that they understand. And I think there's a way that we can do it. We just need to, I think our entire industry needs to work together to figure out that way. Cause you're right. It's, you hear that people, it's so polarized now, and networks. And that's one thing that I love about our station is we sometimes, I think, purposely try not to get too much into the fray of national politics. We're a local station,
Yeah.
but just because we don't want people to say, oh, this station's this way or that way. Like that's the one thing I do like about local is I think local, it's not just talking heads from one side or the other. I think it's in most cases a little more objective than what you're seeing from at least the cable channels.
I love the fact that the mainstream media is having a little bit more turn on that, and I think they're starting to kind of understand it now, with the powers of YouTube, X, and all the social media accounts, and then bridging that gap, I think, between like independents like myself and someone that works for a more larger entity here at locally. And I love the fact that we're able to, like, they're getting hip on this now. They're allowing this stuff to happen where probably, and you've been in the business a lot longer than I have. And, this probably wouldn't have happened 10 years ago. We wouldn't be having this interview. You probably get X'd out. And thank you to your producer, your producer, your boss, for allowing me to do this.
Karen, yeah, she runs all our outside media and stuff like that. Yeah, no, it was really, they're protective of, they're definitely like protective of us, like what we can do, but I get it. They're looking out for our best interests. And, but yeah, I think our folks are realizing that, especially my new boss. I think he's made a really good, big effort to sort of create. We didn't have a huge YouTube presence until my new boss came in, and that's one of the things he's been trying to do. The one thing about it that still remains, though, is the biggest portion of our revenue comes from broadcast, right?
Yeah.
So the commercials you see on TV, that's like by far the biggest. So that is my number one requirement. It's like not X, like, no one's making money. At least we're not making money on X. Like that's when I'm like prioritizing what I'm doing. Like sometimes I'm not posting as much later in the day from the courthouse, because while I'm listening to testimony when it's 3:45, I'm also writing a story and working with a photographer or an editor who's back in Dedham, and I'm emailing him. I'm like, okay, take this section, take this section. So I may not be posting as much, but there's a reason for that, and that's because I have to be on TV with a full recap of the day at 5:00, and I don't want that to get impacted by maybe something that I may be doing on social media.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
so it's a fine line, right?
Lots of deadlines. Yes, and it is a fine line. If we could transition back to, I just want to talk to you a little bit about the Free Karen Read movement, and just, obviously it's been very vocal and very active, trial 1, trial 2. What's your, perspective on the Free Karen Read movement and the public's response to it?
Yeah, it just shows you what can happen when like-minded people get together and really get involved in something. Who would have thought that? I mean, I remember like there were days in the first trial when there was no real buffer zone like they have now, when Karen Read would come out of court and it would be, 9 television stations, and then it would be all the people there supporting her, and it was just a mob scene, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like get a camera, I think they actually ended up, there was one day it got so crazy that they ended up saying, okay, enough. She's not walking she's not leaving the court to the left anymore. She's leaving the court to the
Yeah, they
right,
started bringing
where,
them around to the back.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly, where the SUVs, where her drivers are. And yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly been a force, and it's what's and people are not afraid in the Karen Reed movement to tell you how they feel. You know, I've gotten emails. I mean, sometimes people will say, "Oh, good job with this," but I've had people come after me, you know, and say, "Hey, Ted, that's not right. You're Hank Brennan's mouthpiece." You know, it's so funny because I get it. Sometimes I'm like, when I feel like taking, like, sometimes I get an email, someone who's saying on the prosecution side, sometimes on the defense side, I'm like, you guys should talk to each other and think, you guys should fight. Like, I have no interest in battling with you. You guys should fight amongst yourselves. But it's it's certainly been, I don't think you wouldn't see, I don't think you would see the coverage to the level that you do if it wasn't for the people who are out there and devoting the time they are to her cause. And it's been very financially beneficial for her. Is it, she raised $1 million? Is
Yeah.
that how much she raised? I mean,
Yeah.
that's,
Or over 1 million now, I think. It's close to over 1 million.
yeah, that's a ton of freaking money.
Yeah.
And you know, that's not all just Massachusetts.
It's the
That's,
world. Yeah.
yeah, the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's there's almost like, I wonder, for defense attorneys, is there, on cases, is there like a playbook here? You know, I certainly think, if from a I've always said that from a strategy perspective, that that it's something that Karen Reed is certainly very good at.
Yeah, and you know, and it just shows the public response to this too, that, you know, so many people would join in and help with that fundraising. And you got to think, I mean, we went through entire trial 1, and now we hear for trial 2, and the donations that have come in haven't stopped. I mean, people truly believe, people like myself truly believe in her innocence, and it just shows the power of you know, getting a lot of people together, like you said, and voicing an opinion and getting involved. Let me ask you a question. What do you think about Turtle Boy's involvement in this, in his reporting on this case?
Well, I certainly think there wouldn't be a free Karen Reed movement without him. I think he certainly has driven that movement, has been sort of one of the architects, certainly the loudest voice in that movement. Yeah, you know, especially when things were just developing, he was breaking a lot of stories related to this case. We now know that, you know, those were coming directly from the defense to him. But hey, that's reporting. That's what you do. You have sources. Sources provide you. You know, you're not out there the one who's doing measurements necessarily. The sources you providing you information, and you report it. So, yeah, I mean, I think he this whole situation now with his charges, it's, you know, it's a whole another like side shoot of this case that he's facing, you know, the witness intimidation charges, and the fact that they were going after people for leaving the rubber duckies and things
Right.
like that. I think it
So
just shows you sort of I think there's a level of animosity from the state that they really do not like, you know, this effort.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and it's again, you can't script this. I mean, I'm
No.
telling you, it would be a wild movie. Let me ask you a few more questions here, and I want to thank again. I want to thank Ted Daniel. Ted Daniel. It's not Daniels, so we
Yeah,
squared that. Everybody
that's
calls you
fine.
Daniels.
Everyone calls me Daniels.
It's Ted Daniel. I want to thank him, Boston 25 News, for joining the Sunday Super Show today. Ted, you know, we're looking at the trial's going to be winding down. Karen Reed made a statement the other day that she's feeling that this is going to, you know, they're getting ready to wind down by Tuesday. I don't know. I don't see it. Your thoughts on that, and what will you be watching most closely coming to, you know, the end of trial before this goes to the jury?
Yeah, so my understanding is Dr. Lapizada, who's a medical examiner, and Dr. Rentschler, who is Dr. Wolf's colleague from ARCA, are the last two remaining witnesses. Plus, though, you have to remember that Hank is going to call rebuttal witnesses.
Welcher. I think Welcher's coming back.
Yep, he's going to call rebuttal witnesses. So I don't know. I think the defense could be done by Tuesday. Maybe the prosecution gets their rebuttal witnesses Wednesday. Maybe we get closings on Thursday. The defense filed a proposed jury instructions, moving in that direction. And one of the things they asked for was to be able to tell the jury, to allow the jury to infer something negative, the fact that Proctor Higgins and Brian Albert were not called by the prosecution. So the judge is going to have to rule on that and decide if she'll allow that. But that's something that they're asking for in their jury instructions. One thing I did not see in the jury instructions, and I'm not 100% sure how this plays out, is there's no third party culpability request in the jury instructions. So as you said, I think the defense has certainly packaged this trial much differently than they packaged the first one, more with the accident itself than saying, could it have been this person, could it have been that person. I mean, you've gotten some of that. And they certainly seem to be pointing the finger at Higgins more than anybody else. By going down that line of the texting and the flirting that him and Karen had been doing. And Jackson even said during one time, questioning somebody, would Higgins have a reason to be, to feel mad at Karen because, that she kissed John in front of him.
Right.
You remember that. So, I mean, that's Jackson sort of just layering the groundwork. So yeah, I mean, I'll be happy when it's done. And just, you got to wonder what I hope there's not another mistrial. I mean, I hope we get a resolution this time, because that just seems like so much work for everyone involved. But you never know. I mean, all it takes is some very, strong-willed people on either side to put their foot down and be like, no, I'm not gonna, this is how I feel. I'm not changing it.
Yeah. It just takes one. That's it. Just
Right.
takes one. Yeah.
But I'd love to be able to ballpark it, but I can't. I think there are things that the prosecution has raised that you're like, okay, like, how did this happen then? You'd have to go all in on the conspiracy, all in on, as many as 12 or 13 people, doing nefarious things or lying, for the jury to say, okay, the reason this happened was because Karen Read was framed. And I'm not saying that that's completely out of the ballpark, but it's a pretty high bar.
I think it's interesting, and I had Jess Machado on my show. I've been having her come in on Wednesday nights, and we've been doing these kind of Wednesday night rundowns. And I'm sure you know who she is inside the courtroom.
But she's great.
I love Jess. Yeah, I love Jess. And just talking about ARCA, I mean, she was tweeting the other day that during their presentation, and that obviously the jurors were very tuned in, and when Hank Brennan got up to start doing his cross on them at certain times, and I don't know if you noticed this, but from what she was reporting, there were a lot of eye rolls, like kind of like, when Hank was really trying to attack Dr. Wolf. I can't say, is that a good sign from the jury? I mean, I don't know. You never know how jurors are thinking. Maybe, they're over this and they just want it to complete. But I found that to be very interesting. And in my opinion, a good sign. If someone's attacking something that's science incredible and you're seeing it for your eyes, we saw those demonstrations. In my opinion, I don't care. I mean, you could talk as much BS after that, but you visually saw what happened during those presentations. I just found that some very interesting observations. Did you get any of that in watching the jury during ARCA?
I didn't, but that might be my, just me not paying as close attention to them as I could. And I'm always very hesitant to say, one expression may mean X or Y, because I feel like I'm not in somebody's and I don't know exactly, except for the guy who smirks a lot. It's pretty clear what that he has a thought going on at the time. But yeah, I mean, I certainly, in the fact that I think that the defense has done a better job of establishing that Arca is not an insurance investigation firm, as the first jury thought. That this is hired by another agency, and the word agents has come out. The word FBI has
Well,
never
FBI
come out.
come out.
What?
Yeah, FBI came out. That came out.
Okay, all right.
We've heard
I know.
that.
I remember the first trial. It definitely came out.
Yeah.
Someone said, "Oh, that was the day I was talking to the FBI." But for the most part, they've been very careful with saying another law enforcement agency. But agents, who else are agents? It's like I don't think it's a leap to think that the jury probably has that now and understands that the feds were involved, and that's got to be like, if they don't know about this case, that's got to be like a whole head scratcher for them, right? Like, so what the hell, what are the feds doing involved in this case, and what does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And that has to weigh on your mind in a decision too. Like, why are they looking into this? Why would they have some case to come in? The federal authorities above, local police and state police. Here's the government that stepped in and they're taking a deep look in this. Something's going to be going on there. And then you're hearing all the totalities of everything in the case too. So I would think that has to be inside a juror's mind. Ted, just one last question here. I'll let you go. And again, I appreciate you taking this hour out of your day on this Sunday to come over and here and hang out on the show. So, finally, what do you hope that people will take away from your coverage of the Karen Read trial and retrial? And hopefully we get, like you said, a resolution in this at the end of this case. What would you like people to take away from your coverage?
From my coverage personally?
Yeah.
I just hope that they, like, that it's fair, that it's accurate. Those would be the two most important things. I don't put makeup on before I do a live shot outside. Like, that's not, I am who I am. I've been doing this long enough, like, where it's like, I don't know, that there are people who in my field, and I tell you, a lot of the reporters in the courtroom is a really good group and a hardworking group, and that we do care. It's like we're interested as well, and we're trying our best to accurately and depict what's happening, and also give you some context, and also eyes wide open, that I did it with eyes wide open. And a lot of, I'm not, by, there are state agencies that do not love me, and people in law enforcement. I have a lot of friends who are in law enforcement, but there's some people who don't, because of some of the reporting that I've done. But that's what I do, and it's like, I'm fine with that. It's like, we're not here to make friends, and we have a job to do. And I hope people see that there are some people that are left that are trying to work for them and try to just tell you what I see.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I love, again, bridging the gap and allowing you to come on and hang out here today, spend this hour with us. Ted, again, I appreciate your time, and look forward to watching your reporting the remaining of the case. And if there's any time you ever want to come back and speak, I'd love to have you back on the show.
Well, thank you so much. Keep up the good work. I really appreciate you having me on, and definitely, yeah, it was really good to see you and good to chat. I enjoy it. This has been my life for like 3 years, right? So
It's been mine too. So
yeah,
I get it.
and it's like, it's what everyone wants to talk to at parties and baseball games, and yeah, it's,
Yeah.
but I'm owning that. It's like, this is what I'm doing, and I'm also know that I'm watching history unfold as it happens.
Yeah. And we're part of it. We're part of the history.
Yeah,
All right, Ted. Thank you so much. Have a great Sunday.
right.
And
Yeah,
again,
you too.
let's do this again sometime if you'd like.
Absolutely. Good to see you.
All right.
Thank you for having
All right.
me.
Take care. All right. That is Ted Daniel, Boston 25. Again, I want to thank him for taking an hour on the Sunday and hanging out here on the Super Show. And maybe we can do a wrap up, once this all concludes. If we have a conclusion, we can have Ted back on the show and do another one of these. But again, thank you all so much for being here. If you haven't subscribed, please make sure to subscribe here. I got a lot of shows lined up this week. We'll have a Monday night wind up on Monday with attorney Nan Gallagher and a retired Mass State Police Todd McGee. We're going to actually have another lawyer joining us on that show. And then we have on Wednesday night, I have Jess Machado again doing the Wednesday night rundown here. I'm looking forward to that as well. So lots of good things here for the remainder of the trial. Hopefully it wraps up this week. I don't know. I think we have a little bit longer here to go, but we'll see how everything wraps up. Again, I want to thank everybody for hanging out this afternoon. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I will be over on the Mazza Media channel at 6 p.m. doing some fundraising for Karen Reed. You're going to want to join us over there. And we'll talk to everybody soon. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.